The ignored signal. The signal arrived without warning, drifting through deep space like a dying breath. It was weak, broken, and old. Lost between stars, no one cared to watch anymore. At the Orion trade station, hundreds of alien species lived and worked together. The station was busy, loud, and full of light, but the signal came from darkness. Automatic systems marked it as low priority. The source was listed as a Deathworld system. That single word was enough to make most species look away. Deathworlds were places of extreme danger, high gravity, violent storms, deadly creatures, and constant struggle. Most believed nothing intelligent could live there for long. The signal repeated again and again. 3 simple words hidden in static. We are alive. No one rushed to answer it. No alarms were raised. No rescue ships were launched. The Galactic Council gathered to decide its fate. Representatives floated, stood, or crawled into the chamber. Holograms showed the signal path and its origin. As soon as the Deathworld label appeared, fear filled the room. One delegate spoke calmly but firmly. This is not our problem. Another added that Deathworld signals were often traps or mistakes. Some said helping would risk the entire station. Others argued that resources were too valuable to waste. The vote was quick and cold. Ignore the signal. Archive it. Let silence take care of the rest. Only one being did not agree. A human communications officer named Elias Ward. He sat quietly at the edge of the chamber, listening. Humans were still new to the galaxy. They came from a Deathworld themselves, and that made others uneasy. Elias had heard thousands of signals before. Pirate tricks, broken beacons, false alarms. But this one felt different. The voice hidden in the noise was not aggressive. It was tired, scared, and holding on. After the council left, the chamber lights dimmed. The signal was scheduled for deletion, just another lost cry in space. Elias stayed behind. He accessed the logs using his clearance. The system warned him one last time. Unauthorized interaction. He ignored it. He isolated the signal and enhanced the audio. Static cleared just enough to hear more words. They are coming. We cannot hide anymore. Please. Elias felt his hands tighten. He knew that tone. It was the sound of people who had already lost hope. People waiting for death. Outside the station, stars burned silently. Inside, laws and fear kept everyone safe. But safety meant nothing to those already dying. Elias opened a private channel. No council approval, no rescue fleet, just a single human voice sent into the dark. This is Orion Station. We hear you. Hold on. The message was short, but it was enough. Moments later, a reply came back, clearer than before, filled with shock and relief. They answered. They finally answered. Elias knew what he had done. He had broken protocol. He had challenged the council, and he had called attention to humans. Far away, on a dark and violent world, something else was listening to, and it did not like that the signal was no longer ignored. The reply from the dark system changed everything. Inside Orion Trade Station, alarms stayed silent, but fear began to spread. The signal was no longer just noise. It was proof that someone was still alive. When the Galactic Council learned that a response had been sent, anger followed quickly. Security drones moved through the station halls. Whispers filled the air vents and corridors. Everyone wanted to know who broke the rules. The council chamber filled again. Heavier than before, Elias Ward stood in the center, guarded by 2 drones. He did not resist. He did not speak. He simply waited. The Deathworld system glowed in red above them. One delegate slammed a clawed limb against the table. Humans act without thinking. Another called it reckless and dangerous. They spoke of old wars and lost fleets. One species shared ancient records. Stories of Deathworlders who survived poison air and crushing gravity. Creatures who adapted to fast and fought too hard. Races that never stayed weak for long. The word human echoed with unease. Elias listened quietly. He had heard these fears before. To them, humans were chaos given flesh. Strong, emotional, and impossible to predict. The council voted again. This time the decision was harsher. Elias would be removed from duty. Humans would be blamed if something went wrong. And no rescue ships would be sent. But the universe did not wait for permission. A new message arrived, breaking through the station network. It was clearer now, stronger. The survivors were closer to the relay. They spoke fast, afraid of being cut off again. They are surrounding us. The ground shakes at night. Our shelters are failing. We see shapes in the storms. Some council members turned away from the screen. Others stared in silent horror. These were not soldiers asking for backup. These were families, scientists, children. Elias raised his head. Every minute we wait, they die. His voice was calm, but firm. The chamber fell quiet before the council could answer. Sensors detected movement. Human ships were powering up in nearby docks. Unauthorized launch codes lit the control panels. Pilots ignored station commands. A council member shouted in panic, "Recall them now," but it was already too late. Human vessels jumped into formation. Old ships, rugged ships, built for harsh worlds. They did not wait for escorts. They did not ask for protection. As the fleet prepared to jump, alien observers watched in disbelief. Humans moved with purpose, not fear. They shared quiet messages between ships, short, simple, and focused. Elias was escorted to a viewing window. From there, he saw the human fleet disappear into folded space. His fate no longer mattered, only the signal did, far across the void. On the Deathworld surface, the survivors huddled together as the sky burned. Shadows moved beyond the storm walls. Each sound felt closer than the last. Then their instruments changed. A new signal appeared, strong and steady, not alien, not unknown, human, from the darkness of space. The Deathworlders were coming, and the galaxy was about to learn why they should never be ignored. The human fleet exited folded space at the edge of the Deathworld system. Stars looked dimmer here, as if light itself was afraid. Sensors began to fail almost immediately. Readings jumped, twisted, and vanished into noise. The planet hung below them like a shadow, covered in thick clouds and endless storms. Lightning flashed across its surface without pause. Winds screamed, strong enough to tear metal apart. Alien observers watching from distant relays expected chaos. They believed human ships would turn back or break apart, but the fleet held formation. Engines adjusted smoothly. Pilots stayed calm. Human commanders shared simple orders. Hold course. Trust your training. No long speeches, no panic. As the ships moved closer, gravity pulled harder. Hull plates groaned under the pressure. Rain made of ice and dust struck the shields. The Deathworld fought everything that touched it. Inside one ship, Elias Ward stood behind reinforced glass. He had been allowed to observe. Nothing more. His hands were steady, but his chest felt heavy. Below him were lives depending on this moment. On the planet's surface, the survivors were running out of time. Their shelters shook with every distant impact. Power cells flickered and failed. Children cried quietly to avoid being heard. Through broken sensors, shapes moved in the storm. Tall, twisted figures, too many to count. They did not rush. They waited. The human fleet reached drop distance. This was the most dangerous point. Atmosphere interference blocked communication. Each ship would descend alone. Drop bays opened. Human soldiers checked their gear in silence. Armor was scratched and heavy. Faces were focused, not afraid. These soldiers were born on worlds with earthquakes, worlds with predators and disasters. They knew how to survive when everything went wrong. Dropships detached and fell toward the planet. Fire wrapped around their hulls. Turbulence threw them violently. But no one screamed. From orbit, alien observers watched in disbelief. No species they knew would attempt this. Not for strangers, not for a lost signal. The first dropship broke through the storm layer. Darkness swallowed it whole. Sensors went silent. For several long seconds, nothing was heard. Then a calm human voice returned. Ground contact achieved. Hostiles confirmed. We are not alone. On the surface, the survivors looked up. Through rain and ash, they saw lights descending, not falling, landing. The ground shook as human boots touched the Deathworld. Floodlights cut through the storm. Weapons powered on with a low hum. The shadows moved closer. The creatures sensed something new, something that did not run. Human soldiers formed a line between the shelters and the dark. They did not shout. They did not chase. They waited. Elias listened to the open channel, heart pounding, breath held. From the darkness, a sound echoed, deep, slow, and hungry. The kind of sound that meant the hunt had begun. The human commander spoke one final order. Hold the line, and in the storm-filled night of a Deathworld, humanity prepared to meet the darkness face to face. The storm did not slow when the humans landed. Rain struck like falling stones. Wind screamed across the open ground. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The survivors watched from behind broken walls. They expected chaos. They expected fear. Instead, they saw calm movement. Human soldiers adjusted their positions. They formed a wide arc around the shelters, each one covering the other. No wasted motion, no shouting. The first creature stepped into the light. Its shape was wrong, too tall, too many limbs. Eyes that reflected no light at all. It did not roar. It studied the humans, as if trying to understand them. The commander raised a fist. Every soldier froze. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then the creature charged. The ground shook under its weight. Human weapons fired together. Light tore through the rain. The creature screamed, but it did not fall. More shapes emerged from the darkness, moving faster. Now, the survivors cried out in fear. But the humans did not break. They shifted formation, drawing the creatures away from the shelters. Explosions lit the night. Mud and stone flew through the air. The creatures attacked without care for loss. Driven by hunger and instinct, humans fought with control. They aimed. They covered each other. They retreated only when needed. One creature broke through the line. It leaped toward the shelters. A human soldier ran after it, not hesitating for even a second. He tackled the creature from the side. Both disappeared into the storm. Moments later, only the soldier returned, injured, but standing. The survivors stared in shock. No one had ever charged these monsters before. No one had ever survived doing it. From orbit, alien observers watched the battle. They expected rage. They expected madness. What they saw instead was discipline. Humans did not scream in anger. They did not fight for glory. They fought to protect. The storm grew worse. Sensors failed again. Communication broke into fragments. Then the ground began to shake. Not from the storm. From something larger. The creatures suddenly pulled back. They made space, as if obeying an unseen command. A massive shape rose from the darkness. Its shadow swallowed the lights. Each step cracked the ground. The commander's voice came through the static, low and steady. All units, brace. The survivors felt true fear for the first time. If the smaller creatures were unstoppable, this one felt like the end. Human soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons. No one ran. No one asked to retreat. Elias listened from orbit, every breath heavy in his chest. He understood now. Humans were not fearless. They simply chose to stand anyway. The giant creature let out a deep, shaking roar and stepped fully into the light. The battle was far from over. The giant creature stood taller than any structure nearby. Its body was covered in thick armor plates. Scars covered its skin like old battle marks. Its eyes burned with slow intelligence. The smaller creatures backed away. They waited. This was their leader. The human line did not break. Weapons adjusted for heavier fire. Energy levels were pushed to their limit. The commander studied the creature in silence. The giant moved forward. Each step crushed rock into dust. The ground trembled under its weight. Without warning, it charged. Faster than something that size should move. The humans opened fire. Light and sound filled the storm. Shots burned across its armor. Some were absorbed. Some cracked plates apart. But the creature kept coming. A blast knocked 2 soldiers to the ground. Another was thrown against a broken wall. Still, the line held. The survivors watched with wide eyes. They had never seen anything stand against this monster. They had never seen anyone try. The commander gave a sharp order. The line split. Soldiers moved with perfect timing. The giant followed the movement. He focused on the nearest group. That was the plan. A human carrying heavy charges ran toward the creature. He moved through fire and debris. The creature turned, raising a massive limb. The survivors screamed. The human did not slow. The charge was planted at the base of the creature's armor. The human was thrown back by the impact. The explosion ripped through the storm. The giant staggered. Its roar turned into pain. Armor shattered and fell away, but it was not dead. It swung blindly, destroying everything near it. A group of smaller creatures rushed the shelters, sensing weakness, sensing blood. Without waiting, another human moved. This one saw the children trapped behind fallen walls. He ran past the line, ignoring the danger. He pulled the children free, shielding them. With his own body, a creature struck him from behind. The human fell, but he did not let go. The commander shouted orders. The line closed again. Fire focused on the wounded giant. The creature let out one final roar, then collapsed. Shaking the ground like an earthquake, silence followed, broken only by rain and heavy breathing. The smaller creatures fled into the darkness. The hunt was over. The survivors slowly stepped into the open. They looked at the humans with something new. Not fear, not worship, respect. From orbit, the alien council watched in shame. They had chosen safety over lives. Humans had chosen sacrifice. Elias closed his eyes. This was the meaning of HFY, not pride, not power, but standing when others looked away. In the storm and darkness of a death world, humanity had been tested, and it did not fail. Morning came slowly to the death world. The storm weakened, rain softened into mist, light broke through heavy clouds. For the first time in many cycles, the survivors stood among broken ground and fallen walls. They were alive, because someone had answered. Human medics moved carefully through the shelters, treating wounds, sharing water, speaking softly. The human soldiers stood guard, even after the danger passed, tired, injured, but alert. They did not celebrate. They simply stayed. The survivors gathered near the human commander. Their leader stepped forward, shaking. "We were forgotten, but you came." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything lost. A transmission was prepared, not private, not hidden, but open to the entire galaxy. From orbit, Elias watched the feed activate, his punishment forgotten, his choice justified. The survivors spoke of the darkness, of the monsters, of the fear. Then they spoke of the humans. They described ships that did not turn away, soldiers who stood between life and death, hands that pulled children from ruins. The message spread faster than any warning ever had, across trade routes and core worlds, into places that had once voted to stay silent. The Galactic Council could not stop it. They could only listen. Old records were reopened. Deathworld classifications were questioned. Fear began to change into understanding. New laws were written. SOS signals could no longer be ignored, not because of protocol, but because of responsibility. On the Deathworld, human ships prepared to leave. Repairs were made, supplies shared, goodbyes spoken. The survivors offered gifts, shelter, protection. Anything they had left, the humans refused. They asked for nothing. They had only answered a call. As the fleet lifted into the sky, the survivors watched in silence, knowing they would never forget this day. Across the galaxy, stories spread of Deathworlders who walked into darkness, not to conquer, but to protect. Elias stood alone at the viewing window, stars stretching endlessly beyond him. One signal had changed everything. The galaxy had learned a lesson written in courage. When others turn away, humanity answers. And from that day forward, no cry for help was ever truly alone again.